have a little surprise for you today, Michael Essa, FD Champion 2013. We have a destroyed F12.
Well, it's not destroyed.
Well, it's destroyed to a point where it's not recognizable. But for you today, I have a non-destroyed F12 point in right now. You forget how beautiful these cars are just from Ferrari. So Lauren from Eurocars here, she brought us a 2014 Ferrari F12.
Woo! Sounds pretty sick. So I've only heard Damon's F12 with the turbos on it, and it sounds so plugged up, but this thing sounds like a V12.
It's a crazy car. What's crazy is the value got up so much on them. So we actually destroyed a car's worth much more than we paid for it. We paid $290 Canadian for it. Now these are the mid-2s USD.
200 to 300.
Yeah. Hi Lauren, how are you? Welcome to HQ. You guys know Lauren from Eurocar. You guys did a video there when Damon was looking for a hypercar. And Lauren saw a video I made that you guys didn't like of the bank repo. She's like, hey, if you want to buy a clean F12, I've got one for you guys to build. And I was like, funny story about that video. Well, you guys know the rest of that story. But I was like, hey, bring it by anyways. Mike's never driven a stock F12. I thought it'd be cool to compare our car to this one and the differences because they are vast. It's weird to think that's the same car we have over there.
There's so many things on here that aren't recognizable. When we saw that car, when we took it apart, it was so modified already. I feel like the back window is different on this one. I don't know if it's a 1 year difference because that's a 2013 and this is 14, but I feel like the window is bigger.
I think you're just used to the car being cut out because you cut it up.
Maybe because it has a wing on it.
It makes me want to buy one just to have a clean one.
It is pretty sick. And it looks really good in black too. I'm usually like a Ferrari purist and it has to be red.
Really?
Yeah.
It doesn't look like
red. I mean the color.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Red. This car, the shape, the lines, looks really good in black.
And ironically, ours is the same spec interior. It has a Daytona seats, which we have.
Yeah.
These are carbon, which we have. When Damon bought that car from August, it was one of the highest spec F12s in the country. If you think about where that car has been, it's actually crazy. We've probably spent, that'll be $1 million car.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Easily.
How much horsepower are we aiming for again?
1,500 wheel.
1,500 wheel horsepower.
Double what stock is. It's gonna be a beast. The interiors are really nice, so I was noticing that. Because when we took that F12 apart, there was a lot of interior peeling. So this has got like an Alcantara, but I feel like the other one was leather, right?
It was. And it was peeling from the heat from the turbo. So the other one, the turbo exhaust came out right here, right? And it was melting everything.
The whole center section was like peeled up. Yeah, this thing is really nice.
Carbon fiber everything, and then a custom speaker cabinet in the back.
It's funny, it's a hatchback. You forget that. So basically, it's a Civic for rich people.
Oh,
Damn! That is amazing. So this car you're selling right now.
We are.
How much would a young guy walks in there, right? Worked at Starbucks for years, started a YouTube channel. He's 40 now. He's been divorced twice. How much would it cost me to buy this car right now if I wanted to buy it from you?
$250.
$250.
Just, you know, it's just a little bit.
I want to see what the factory engine compartment looks like because I've never seen it before. That one has been so modified before we took it apart with the twin turbos, the manifolds. I'm interested to have that kind of visual comparison of what this thing looked like from the factory.
This is our engine, Lauren. And if you want to trade, we can chat. It's like an airplane from like a P-51 Mustang. It's huge.
It is a massive engine.
Oh, wow.
No.
You sure?
Yeah.
Wow.
These were converted to the throttle body. So they moved the throttle bodies from
and
here.
this is block. We have these, don't we?
Yeah. This whole thing.
But look where red that one is compared to ours.
Yeah, different powder coat because they had to weld it and they couldn't match it.
Oh.
This part has the throttle body adapted to the front of this, and then they chopped that whole side off there to make room for the turbos because it wouldn't have fit.
Would you do the same thing right now if you could start over? If we had this motor and Lauren gave it to us, would you chop it in the same way?
What I think we're going to do, make a brand new intake manifold.
What?
Yeah, completely redesigned, 3D printed.
How can I afford to do that?
It's coming out of your salary, Dave. I think honestly, it's only going to be about 10 grand to do it.
Will it say Ferrari or anything, or look like anything like this, or be completely different?
We can make it say whatever we want, like DDE.
I think we have to, that line where Ferrari might get pissed if you alter their name. It might have to say Ferrari.
But if we make a new part and put Ferrari on it, because it's not a factory piece, that might be worse.
Lauren, what are your thoughts?
Well, it looks like we're DDE everything,
Yeah.
so I mean, might as well.
Well, let's start a corp in your name, put the cars in that corp. You rent them to us. If there's litigation, it goes to that corp where she owns, and we're safe.
I want no part.
Go to America.
The other issue was the exhaust. cost, really. So it's so tight in here, and because they didn't want to modify a ton when they built the turbo kit, the design was not right for flow. So there was tons of back pressure, and that just kind of killed the sound of this engine, created a lot of heat internally, and it's already a high compression engine, and you put turbos on it, and you're trying to run it on pump gas. No way. That's why they had to run it on that 110 octane leaded fuel just to get it to work, and it was still really ragged edge.
Let's show Lauren our F12, which I would say arguably is better because it's red. Mike, tell Lauren what you've done to this thing.
We took it apart. if you couldn't see that already, we took every single piece off of the car, and then we cut a lot out of it also.
Okay, why? Is this a passion project? What are we doing to it?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So Damon had this idea. I don't know if you've ever seen the Ken Block Gymkhana videos.
Oh yeah.
So his vision from the start of Daily Driven Exotics was to do that, but with an exotic car. He wanted to do it in a Ferrari or Lamborghini. Together we had a brilliant idea to take a $400,000 or $500,000 car with all the mods that they had done to it and completely take it apart, chop it up, and turn it into a crazy race car with a purpose to do jumps, slides.
This will be the first of its kind.
Exactly.
All right, they're going for a drive. I have a flight to catch. I'm going home for a few days, then off to Miami for Supercar Room's Epic Rally, Miami to Vegas for F1. So I'll see you guys on a road trip. 10 days, Damon and I in one car. Damon and I in one cup. See you guys later.
All right. Very, very different sound than when I didn't drive that F12. I pulled it out of the little bay over here and pulled it back there and started tearing it apart. But sounds good. Like defeats the point of
like whoever put that in,
stereo system.
is probably not a car guy.
Yeah, for a Ferrari, this thing is very, very soft. It's definitely like a GT style car.
Yeah. Some of the Huracans that I've driven just feel so chunky.
Yeah, very, very stiff.
Very aggressive.
Yeah.
I prefer a Ferrari over a Lamborghini.
I'm the same. I like Ferraris better. I like their styling.
And this is like timeless, just a sexy car.
Yeah, you can really feel the difference in the transmission between the modes too. Like right now it's very touchy on the throttle.
Right.
And then you put it back into like sport mode or something and it gets a lot more, street friendly.
This thing is so fast.
It is. It really needs an exhaust on it though. Like that would just make it sound so much more impressive. Yeah. It sounds good stock. I love Ferraris, how the power delivery is. It's so smooth and just like linear. It doesn't feel like flat. It doesn't drop off. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for bringing this car by and allowing me to drive it for a bit. Really gave me a good idea of all the work that we're going to need to do on our F12. If you guys are in the market for an F12, this is an awesome one. I love this color. It's got the sound system. It runs great, drives great. So if you guys are in the market for it or any other exotics in SoCal, you can contact Lauren at Eurocar and she will take care of you and find you exactly what you're looking for. And thanks again, Lauren.
Thank you. I'll see you next time.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye. Well, that was really cool being able to see and drive a completely stock F12. Well, maybe it wasn't completely stock. It was slightly lowered, had some bigger wheels on it, and maybe had an exhaust. I'm not sure. It wasn't that loud. In either case, it was very cool to just see the transformation between what this car was from the factory. But now I have something that has arrived, and we've actually waited to unbox it with you guys so you can check it out as well. It is a very important part of this build. Well, it's kind of the centerpiece of the whole thing. When the hood is closed, you're gonna see these sticking through, and it's gonna look really impressive, and that is the turbos. 2 of them, and I'm gonna go grab them right now, bring them over here, we're gonna put them on the table, we're gonna unbox them. Yes! These are Borg Warner EFR turbos. Honestly, these are the best turbos that I have ever used. Formula Drift, I've run quite a few different turbos, different sizing, different brands, and nothing has come even close to these. So I'm gonna get them out of the box right now, set them up on the table. I'm pretty excited about this. Turbo in each of these boxes, and then we have the exhaust housings in here. And the reason that they don't come assembled all together from the factory is because they have a lot of different exhaust housing sizes. So I'll pop these open and then we'll talk a little bit about that. Do you guys get excited when you're opening up new car parts? Because I do. Even though this isn't for my car, but just building cars in general and getting these new parts in, it's always exciting, especially when they're so cool. Dude, check that out.
Oh my goodness.
It's huge, right?
It's giant.
And we got 2 of these. This thing is, I mean, as far as technology goes in turbochargers, this is state of the art. They make some really impressive stuff. So Borg Warner is a huge company. They make a lot of factory turbochargers for, well, a lot of cars that are turbocharged from the factory, which makes sense, right? So, and this is kind of their motorsport line of turbos. This is the EFR turbo. The difference between these turbos and other ones really comes down to the material that they use in the turbine blades. It's like a mixture of titanium and aluminum. I'll have to look up what the name is. I don't remember it, but it is half the weight of a standard turbine wheel. This thing is feather light, so it doesn't take a lot of exhaust gas energy. It spins very easy. There's not a lot of mass there. So you get your spool really quick, which allows you to run a bigger exhaust housing and a bigger turbo in general. You can have something that flows a lot of air, but also spools up well. So you don't have this massive turbo that's very laggy and makes a lot of top end power, but you have a turbo that is basically good all around from low RPM range to high RPM range, and that's what makes these different. This is also the Supercore, which is an aluminum center as well instead of a cast iron center. That saves 7 pounds per turbo. They're just as durable if you run the water cooling to them. Weight is really your enemy when you're trying to build a performance car. The lighter it is, the faster it's going to be, the better it's going to stop, the better it's going to handle. For the exhaust housings, we went with one of the larger size housings that they make. And the reason behind that is that this is a V12 engine. It's 6.3 liter. We really want to get that V12 sound back. We want this thing to scream. You hear the turbos, you hear that spool, you hear that whine, but you also get that exhaust note that you don't get from anything else except for a V12 engine. Trying to bring that back, we were able to go with a large exhaust housing because of how this turbo is built and the gamma tie. Is that what it's called, Sean?
Yeah, gamma tie. Yeah.
So, yeah, some crazy material that allows us to do that. So here's our housing. You can kind of see here, we've got some pretty big inlet ports, and then it all gets through this snail, pushed down and through this groove that's in there. And then inside of that groove is basically the exhaust hits this wheel and gets it spinning. It's a pretty large groove, and maybe we'll compare it with the old one, but the bigger that groove is, the bigger this inlet is in here, and this whole housing in general, is how much exhaust that this can flow. And so here's a comparison. The turbos, as far as overall sizing, are somewhat similar, but you can see between the exhaust housings, they're very different. So this is a single scroll turbo. This is a twin scroll. So the amount of exhaust gas that's going into this can be quite a bit higher. You can also see on the exhaust wheel how much different they are. So this one has like stepped blades.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's got like 5 that are taller and 5 that are lower, where this one, they're all exactly the same. So I think the idea behind this is to try to minimize the weight on the wheel, because they use more of a cast steel type material that's a lot heavier, where this one is super light. Obviously these were seized up too, which we got a wrench and we got them to unseize.
Free up a little bit.
Free up a bit, but either way the other one was still frozen. But the biggest difference here is, like I said before, the material in this wheel. I mean, it's absolute game changer. Another really cool feature is the front of the compressor housing actually has a blow-off valve built into it. You don't have to run external blow-off valves. This recirculates. So basically, as the turbo is spinning, compressing the air and putting it through here, this will actually release the pressure from this side and put the air back into the front of the housing here. If you have airflow meters or mass airflow sensors on your car and you have a blow-off valve that's letting all that air out to the atmosphere, that airflow meter is going to read that there's still a ton of air being moved, but basically the throttles are closed. It shouldn't be dumping fuel right now. You'll get back on the gas and you'll have basically a very rich condition. The car will like chug a bit and won't run right. So this is all built in, pretty cool. Some of the other cool features on this turbo, we've got this port here that isn't drilled out yet, but we can remove the intake housing or the compressor housing and basically drill that out, and then we can use a sensor in there that's actually gonna read off of these blades and as they spin, and we'll be able to tell what the turbocharger speed is. And that's really important when you get into high horsepower applications, especially because turbos are limited to how fast they can spin. I believe these turbos, I think these are 125,000 RPM. I could be wrong. We've also got this built-in wastegate solenoid. So this is basically, we've got the boost that's coming through here. So when the turbo is spinning, it's creating boost. That's going through, it's coming out of here, and this is basically gonna be routed to an intercooler. Then after the intercooler gets routed to the throttle bodies, which after the throttle bodies goes into the engine. That's where the boost comes from, inlet and the outlet over here. And this is an electronic control solenoid. So this would hook up to the ECU or a boost controller, and it'll regulate the amount of pressure going into the wastegate. So the wastegate is in the exhaust stream. Instead of all of the exhaust from the engine being routed into the exhaust housing, this will actually sit in the manifold and bleed off some of that exhaust, depending on what your target boost is, what your boost control solenoids are set at. It will open this valve. So this will open, and the amount that it opens and how long it opens for is dependent on what your boost controller is set at. And that will bleed this exhaust out into the exhaust system, past the turbo, or if you have a setup like this with wastegates dumped out of the hood, it'll just blow that exhaust directly out of this port. And that exhaust energy, that volume, won't go through here, so the turbo will slow down or hold its speed and maintain the boost that you're looking for. We'll actually open this up so you guys can see how it works. It's pretty interesting. It's very, very simple, but very durable. This has to take a lot of heat. And I don't think the springs in here are very strong right now, because we were only running about 8 pounds of boost from what I remember. And that spring is replaceable, and there's a bunch of different springs. So you have this huge range of springs depending on what your target boost is. You know, what's your lowest boost, what's your highest boost. You'll basically match the spring to how much boost pressure you want to run. And the reason you don't want to run like an 8-pound spring if you're trying to make 30 pounds of boost is that you're not able to put enough pressure on the backside of this to hold that closed. With the boost, it'll start to creep open and you'll lose boost. So you want to match that spring to what you're planning on running. Another reason you run the wastegate is, well, if you just run the turbo, you have an engine that say can only take 8 or 10 pounds of boost, and the turbo is capable of making 20 pounds of boost or 30 pounds of boost depending on how big the engine is and what size exhaust housings you have on it, all these other factors, but it'll make way more boost than you want. It'll make boost that's kind of uncontrollable. So the wastegate is what allows you to meet and like kind of hit your target for what boost you want to run, along with a lot of other factors. But without a wastegate, with just a turbo, probably going to blow your engine up fairly quickly. Very simple. This one is only running one spring. The higher boost pressure you go, you use a combination of springs to get to that pressure. And then you have this silicone diaphragm here that's reinforced with like a fiberglass. So that's what's keeping the air that's coming into here. This one was actually just to atmosphere. The current setup that was in the car before didn't actually use an electronic boost controller. They were trying to get the boost to come on very slowly, which is what you would get with only a spring and not a electronic control. So with the electronic control, you can say, all right, I want 20 pounds of boost. And as soon as it gets to 20 pounds of boost, it'll hold it at 20 pounds of boost. And also you can put that pressure in to the top and hold this shut for as long as possible. So you get the boost, you get it spooled up as quickly as possible. You meet your target boost as fast as possible and then control it. When you're running only a spring, this will start opening at 2 or 3 pounds of boost, 4 pounds of boost, 5 pounds of boost, 6, 7, 8. It'll be all the way open and hold it there. So you get this much lazier boost curve, which some people do want for different applications. In a drift car, we want it to come on really fast. You want that torque, you want that spool instant. You want to be able to break the tires loose and then kind of pedal through it and control it. We will run a electronic boost controller or through the ECU to basically hold this shut until we get to the boost that we want and then open it up to the right spot and control it. And it's pretty interesting the way it works. It works with pulses of electricity into here, sending little puffs of air to control it and modulate it and hold it in the right spot. Closed and all of the difference between it, so you can really control how much exhaust is going through there. All right, well that was a lot of turbo talk and how all of this stuff works. Now we'll get into the exhaust system a little bit, because all of this stuff doesn't really matter if the exhaust system, the manifolds, that feed the turbo are not designed properly. And I don't know if you guys remember what it looked like before, tons of back pressure. I know they were really limited with space when they were building it with all of the stock components on the car, but we're not limited to any of that anymore. So we've got some collectors we had custom made for this car. These are really nice parts, 1 5/8" runners, and it comes into a 2.5-inch outlet here. We've also got some really cool stainless billet flanges that will adapt the 2.5-inch right onto the end of the collector. It's not gonna go like this once in the car. There's actually gonna be some tubing in between. Visual for now, you can see how that goes together, how nice that fits. And then this will all go onto the table like that, and then eventually we'll line it up and we'll go into the turbo. So you can see how much more efficient this is gonna be. All that exhaust gas is going to be properly merged together. It's gonna flow so much better. And with these merge collectors, it's gonna sound a ton better. You're not gonna get all of that restriction. With an exhaust gas, if you have your exhaust gas that's coming out of the head that wants to expand, but you're not letting it expand, it keeps up the velocity. So if you have it come out and it expands into a tube and that gets jammed into a smaller tube after that, you're really killing the speed of the exhaust. You're making a lot of back pressure, but you're also hurting the performance of the turbo because you're not giving that exhaust gas, basically putting it in there at its optimum, at its highest flow. This hopefully will completely change the way this car runs. Just this alone would have made a huge difference on that factory setup, but obviously it wasn't packageable with everything else there. So we have to build everything on this car custom, and it's all going to be designed around this manifold, around this exhaust system. I think it's going to look really impressive. I have a really good feeling that this thing is going to sound insane. I don't think there's any other car around that I've seen or heard that has an exhaust system like this with turbos, the way we're going to design it. So I want to get this done as soon as possible, put it in the car. But we've got a lot of other things. We've got the whole wiring harness, all the ECUs. We have to make an intake manifold, injectors, plumbing, all that other stuff before we can fire this thing up. But we can build the exhaust because that's going to be the next step. Once we put the engine in the car, bell housing's done, bolt the transmission onto it, make those mounts, and then we can design this exhaust system. So as we're talking about turbos over here, Sean's reminiscing of the good old days when his car was running.
Damn. Ouch.
Yo, maybe you get some motivation to put that thing together because that sounds sick. Dude, that compressor surge is just, it's so sick. Like you hear that, you're literally driving the car and you're modulating the throttle and you hear that and you're like smile on your face. You can't drive the car and hear that and not get a smile on your face.
That's why we don't drive V8s.
Yep.
You don't get that with a V8.
Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, why don't you just LS swap it? That's an easy way to make big power. So you don't get that sound.
Boring.
You don't get that
V8s
feel.
are boring.
Turbocharged the way to go. Turbocharged V12s.
That's next level. I don't know anything about that, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
I can't wait.
It's just 2 of those. Whatever you had.
I can imagine 2 of those. Two J's.
4 JZ.
4.
Dude, 9,000 RPM V12 twin turbo.
Damn, dude, I was only going to 85. Whew. That's crazy.
Baby numbers. So at this point, you might be asking yourself, well, how are we going to get all 6 of these exhaust runners into this and have them all equal length and in the position where we want it? Well, usually that would be an absolute nightmare. Put this up there, make a bracket, hold it in place, and start measuring tube lengths and trying to figure out what kind of shape you would need and where every single one of these ports go into this collector. You could also 3D scan it and have someone draw all of that up in a computer CAD program, but this is a one-off thing. We're not making a production part. So the other way that we can do it is with Legos. These aren't exactly Legos, but they work a lot like Legos. These are all diameter of the tube that we need, and they click together. They have marks on them, so as you rotate them, you can tell how many degrees of rotation you need, or maybe you need a section of tubing is that much bend. Maybe that's what you need. Maybe it's not. Click these things together, put them in the place that you need them. This is gonna make building this just so much easier. They've got these rubber plugs that will go right into our tube, and we can add and take away tubes as needed. Build the entire exhaust system on the side, making sure that it's equal length, making sure that it's going into the correct port in this collector so it will all fit and flow together and look good and sound good. This is a real game changer. I've built some manifolds before for some 6-cylinders, turbo setups. I built some Porsche exhaust systems where they're 3 into a collector on one side. Those are a lot easier to do. You only have 3 tubes. This is going to be a pretty big undertaking. With this stuff, I think it's gonna look really good. It's gonna make it 50 or 60 hours difference in time of what it would have taken to build this all with just buying U-bends that are made out of stainless and cutting them and trying to fit them and mock them all up and hope that you get it right because all those bends are expensive. Well, now we can see exactly what we need, pull this off, make notes, cut the tubes, tack them all together in the same orientation, and we will have a complete set of headers out of plastic, turn into steel, and we're good to go. I still don't know exactly what it's gonna sound like, and that's something that, well, you just cannot tell until you put everything together, but I know it is going to sound amazing. It is going to be night and day difference from what it sounded like before. A lot of stuff coming up. We have the pistons and rods are finished, so we can go pick those up. We still have some more work to do with this engine before we tear it apart again and send it back over to D-Sport, but let me show you guys what we've got done on the car in the last few days. All of the basically Firewall stuff finished up. Sean's been in here for 4 days, just patching every single one of the holes in the Firewall, from air conditioning holes, heater hose holes, to rivets, everything that was on here. Brake assembly used to go through here. That has been patched and sanded down, so it looks super clean. Just a lot of detail stuff. And the reason behind that is we want this to look like a show car and work like a race car. So all this little detail stuff that you wouldn't normally do to a race car. You might make a panel and glue it and rivet it in place, but this is not one of those cars. This is a car that we want to turn heads when it's parked with a hood open, but also just blow people's minds with what this car is going to be able to do and the videos that we're gonna make with this car. Lots of time and effort have gone into this build. We're starting to come along now. We've got the roll cage finished up, minus the door bars. Like I said, we're gonna do that last. We also have this box here that we built and cut a hole in the Firewall, built this box out, and that was for the pedal assembly. So on the pedal assembly, there's a brake balance bar, and we're gonna have a cable that'll run over here so we can adjust the balance between the front and rear brake calipers. So we want more front brake, more left foot braking, but keeping the wheel speed up. We're able to do that. We're able to balance that out. We've also got a dash bar welded in, the brake pedal box. So all of that is done, mounted, ready to just get bolted up. We've got the tunnel all finished up. So Sean's got this all welded in. I think a little bit of finish welding around there on the e-brake mount area. So that's all strengthened up. And you can see we've got a couple of rivets in there. So we've actually got a steel plate that's riveted in from the bottom that's threaded. So the e-brake is not just riding on the aluminum. So we're not threading the aluminum and worried about those bolts getting stripped out and pulling out of there. So we have that steel reinforcement. It's really coming along now. It's starting to take shape. We're doing a lot more stuff on the interior, just like cleaning things up so it looks good. On that side, you can see all the seam sealer was removed in the center of the tunnel there. And you can kind of compare it to that side that hasn't been done yet. All of those little details are going to make this car stand out from everything else. We also have the flywheel and our clutch setup that we can go pick up, put all of that stuff together. We can drop the engine and transmission that's fully bolted together into the car. We can finish off our engine mounts, make our transmission mount, and at that point, figure out the angle of the transmission and make the rear differential mounts as well, because we want to make sure those are on the same plane. We don't have any drive shaft vibration. And then once we make that, the diff mounts, then we can measure it up, get a drive shaft ordered, a carbon fiber drive shaft, of course, because race car. We have a lot of cool parts coming up. We have so much more progress. It's gonna be very big visual progress. It's not gonna be the really detailed stuff. It's not gonna be a lot of roll cage bending. It's gonna be some, I think, really cool stuff. Once we get the engine in here and we can start building that exhaust system, it's basically gonna come off the side of the engine like this and wrap around and come forward into that collector. And then in front, I want it to come out here and come across and go into an X and then back up and then mount the turbos. So we'll get all 12 cylinders into one to X collector, and then out into the twin turbos, hood exit exhaust, wastegates, dumped out of the hood as well. That's gonna be like the centerpiece of this whole car. When you pop the hood on this thing, it is going to be absolutely insane. I hope that you are enjoying these F12 videos. We're back at it now. We're gonna crank this thing out. We're gonna get a lot of stuff done. So if you guys have not subscribed yet, please subscribe. Please like, please tell your friends about these videos. If they're into any type of fabrication, race car building, or just crazy cars in general, tell them to watch it. Check it out. See you guys soon.